And we are back for Monday's coverage of Freedom Convoy 2022 Cruise into the Capitol. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick News, Maverick Multimedia, and these are my co-hosts.
Thanks, Chris Baugh with Flow of Discourse, one of the hosts.
Hi, Brendan Kennedy with the Flow of Discourse podcast.
So today we have some new developments from the truckers' protest in Ottawa. I guess what we're looking at here is our Prime Minister, who went into hiding, but has now tested COVID positive after being, I would think has he been triple jabbed, quadruple jabbed, double jabbed? How many jabs has our PM had?
Well, he doesn't actually have to share that medical information, but I do believe he has been classified as fully vaccinated.
I don't know. We have special rules around here. If any politicians from the mainstream media parties come to this place, they have to show their vaccine passport.
Here he is. He's starting.
Okay, let's bring him up. Can we get some audio there?
Yep.
No audio. He's having some sort of he's making a statement here this morning.
There's no audio coming through?
No.
That might be a tactic, a strategy on his part.
I have the audio. It's playing.
No problem. Here, might be the same issue her having with me yesterday. Here, let me give her a shot real quick. Pull her up here.
Here, Rick, you pull it up. Might work.
No audio there. We'll get this.
All right.
It's the audio I'm getting is not his voice. So I'm wondering if he's maybe speaking in French or. Oh, there we go. Getting anything?
It's very faint.
Yeah.
Turn up your master volume, Rick.
Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth. Hate can never be the answer. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked, frankly, disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults, abuse small business workers, and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. La statue of Terry Fox.
The statue of Terry Fox and the tomb of the unknown soldier are not only symbols of the past. They are important symbols from our history that represent Canadian heroes and the values for which they fought. The sacrifices that these heroes made allowed us to build a better Canada. All Canadians have the right to express their opinion or their disagreement with the government, but they don't have the right to threaten or harass their fellow citizens or to spread hateful messages.
I want to thank the many Canadians who've made donations to the Shepherds of Good Hope and to the Terry Fox Foundation in response to what they saw this weekend. There is no place in our country for threats violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians.
Join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. En ces temps difficiles, tous les politiques
In these difficult times, all politicians need to show responsible leadership. We need to work to bring people together in a positive way.
Hmm.
We need to fight division and fear with facts.
politicians exploiting people's fears, I ask you to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions. Nearly 90% of truckers across the country who've gotten vaccinated, who continue working hard to keep us fed and keep our economy moving, thank you. Truckers have tough jobs. Long hours on the road, days away from their families. Real challenges, particularly over the past 2 years, as they've continued to step up to put food on our shelves and on our tables, to support us with life-saving medication and supplies. We have relied on you, and you can rely on us to continue to stand with you and allow you to do your jobs safely. Almost 90% of you are doing exactly that, right? Exactly that. And we thank you deeply for everything you've done. The behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through together, this is not the story of our pandemic, of our country, of our people. Canada is strong because you are strong. Pendant près de 2 ans,
For nearly 2 years, Canadians have shown strength, generosity, and respect. You've shown your courage. You've made huge sacrifices.
for nearly 2 years, you've been there for each other as neighbors, friends, and fellow Canadians. I think of the moms and dads who looked after their families, the kids who stepped up in so many different ways, seniors who stayed strong in our darkest days, volunteers throughout our communities who supported our most vulnerable, frontline workers, from truckers to store clerks, who've kept our shelves stocked and made sure we have food on our tables, healthcare heroes who've saved countless lives and continue to do so. We know you're tired, and yet you do not stop. You inspire us. Canadians support you. We're in your corner. All of you, you are the story of this pandemic, not the convoy. Cette pandémie,
This pandemic is also the story of the millions of people who made good choices, who got vaccinated, and who made sacrifices to ensure their safety and the safety of others. I can say that I will continue to encourage people to get vaccinated, whether it's for booster shots or vaccinations for children. I will continue to be there for you.
I wish I could tell you that there are no more difficult moments ahead. But we all know I can't say that. What I can say is that this government will continue to have your backs. We will continue to be there for you as long as it takes, with as much as it takes. That's how we've all gotten through this pandemic so far, and that's what we and I will continue to focus on. Because we believe in you. Canadians are compassionate, kind, strong, and resilient. You elected us all to get big things done, and with the return of Parliament, we all have work to do. Later today, I'll be participating in question period, an important part of our democratic system, alongside parliamentarians who, despite threats and intimidation, will continue to serve you, Canadians, and work together to deliver results for people. This afternoon, we'll be introducing legislation to ensure we continue providing as many rapid tests as possible to the provinces and territories. And tonight, I'll be virtually addressing the House of Commons about the situation in Ukraine. I'll be talking about the importance of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. In this difficult time, more than ever, we must stay true to our values, to who we are as Canadians. As Canadians, we stand up for what's right, and mostly, we stand up for each other. That's how we've gotten through this so far. That's how we'll continue to get through this. That's how we remain true to who we are. Merci, mes amis.
Thank you, friends.
Prime Minister, we'll now start the question period for 20 minutes, starting with the phone today. Opératrice, c'est à vous.
Here we go.
Si tu as une question, s'il vous plaît, appuyez sur l'étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Mia Rodson, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm wondering, a lot of the leaders or organizers of this convoy have asked to meet or at least hear from you about what's happening and their demands. Have you or will you or anyone from your government meet with them or negotiate with them in any way?
My focus is standing with Canadians and getting through this pandemic. The way to get through this pandemic is to continue making the challenging choices and sacrifices as citizens, as individuals, as communities, to keep each other safe, to trust science, to trust facts, to continue being there for each other. That is my focus. That is what I will stay focused on.
So no. You're muted, Rick.
Explain the reason why you won't participate or meet with them. I mean, you've attended rallies on the Hill in the past, including during a Black Lives Matter protest and others. Is there a reason that you can give as for why you will not discuss or have any negotiations with this particular group?
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Next question.
Si la prochaine question.
The next question is from Laurence Martin from Radio-Canada. Yes, good morning, Mr. Trudeau. What are you going to do to appease some of the backlash that we've seen in Ottawa in recent days? You've said that some people have been violent and aggressive, but many people have not. So what are you going to do to appease their anger? Answer. First of all, I think that everyone across the country, in Ottawa or elsewhere, is frustrated. Everyone is sick of this pandemic. Everyone is tired. Everyone wants to be done with it. Everyone would love to be able to say, okay, it's over, and move on. But the vast majority of Canadians know that that's not how we can end this pandemic. The way out of this pandemic is getting vaccinated. It's listening to public health advice. And the best way to get out of this pandemic and to continue to be there for each other is to show that we understand the importance of following science, facts, and health experts. That's how we'll get out of this pandemic. And that's what I'm going to focus on. A follow-up question? Some people have accused you of politicizing the question of mandatory vaccination during the election campaign. What would you say to those who say that you share part of the responsibility for the anger that we've seen over this issue? Answer. Canadians chose to get vaccinated, and they did so at a higher rate than in almost any other country in the world. At every step, we have seen Canadians choosing to be there for each other. Not only do we have a higher vaccination rate than many of our peer countries, we've also been able to protect our healthcare system and our seniors, and we've been able to get our economy going in the right way. I understand that there are some people who choose to reject science, who choose to reject the sacrifice that might be required to help our fellow citizens, but that's their choice. My choice is to continue to be there for the 90% of Canadians who are fed up with this pandemic, but who know that the way out of it is by standing in solidarity with each other, showing respect for each other, and following public health advice.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Tom Perry from CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Supporters of this movement will say that it's a small minority of people in this protest who are causing trouble. So is it fair to focus in on the obviously terrible behavior of some and paint all protesters with that brush?
I think, obviously, the right to free expression, the right to assembly, the right to make your displeasure known in a democracy is extraordinarily important and needs to be heeded and respected. But there have been many, many protests over the past years that I've seen, that I've been part of, that I've watched from a distance on Parliament Hill and elsewhere, where people come together angry about a certain thing, wanting something else to change, that don't see the level of hateful rhetoric, of swastikas, of abuse towards their fellow citizens. There is always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right to incite violence, to perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what the folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure.
Following up.
You talk about politicians exploiting people's fears. Who are you talking about, and what impact do you think they're having?
I think all politicians need to think very carefully about who they're supporting, about what messages they're putting out. We have seen over the past many, many months, conservative politicians sharing disinformation about vaccines, encouraging conspiracy theories online. And I think Erin O'Toole is going to need to reflect very carefully on how he's
I agree. I think
walking a
Justin
path,
Trudeau is out of touch.
that supports these people who do not
He is
represent
grasping at
truckers,
straws.
let alone the vast majority of Canadians.
Very true,
Operator,
Adam.
next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Boris Trou.
Next question is
I think
from Le Devoir.
he looks smug. That's what I think.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Do you intend to make any concessions to these truckers? Answer. The challenges that we're facing in terms of supply chains
I'd like
are
to see
not
some
due
video as well
to
of violence.
vaccination policies.
I didn't see
They're
any.
due to COVID-19. The best way to get through this difficult time for truckers and for all Canadians is to continue to follow public health advice, continue to get vaccinated, as nearly 90%
Depends on what they're
of
saying on
truckers
any
already
given day, I
have,
suppose.
and to focus on those priorities. I'm not going to focus on the protesters who don't respect science.
I generally agree, Bill.
Evidence, or
But
in
I
some
don't know who's
cases, our
worse, him or
democratic
Jagmeet
principles.
Singh.
Follow-up question? Yes. The protesters are saying that Canada was at the root. Canada had pressured the Biden administration to implement vaccination mandates for truckers on their side as well. Can you tell us if that's the case? Answer. From the beginning of the pandemic,
And I might add
answered
arrogant
a lot
as
of
well. I think
questions
he's
about
pretty arrogant.
whether our policies were aligned
And
with the
disrespectful.
Americans or not. Now, there are some situations where we were very well aligned with the U.S.
Exactly,
and we worked
Adam, I
very closely
agree with
together,
you.
and in other cases, that was less so. But I have always insisted that each country had to make its own decisions
No,
in
it's
terms
not.
of protecting its own security. But obviously, since the U.S. administration and our government are following the same scientific advice, it shouldn't be a surprise.
You're right, Andrew.
that
It would
the
be.
same
They'd
types
be
of policies are
running
in
that
place to
on a
protect
loop.
citizens.
Thank you. Merci. The next question from Sanda McCharles, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Yes.
In fact,
Prime
Ottawa
Minister,
police have said there was no
said that,
violence.
Aaron O'Toole has to think carefully, but he did meet with some truckers on Friday. Do you think that was an inappropriate gesture of support to truckers, or specifically about anyone else in terms of his caucus, and can you speak to McInerney's participation?
As part of our job as politicians, every single day, we make decisions about who to meet with, who to respond to, how to respond to them, who to engage with, how not just our engagements, but our example impacts on public discourse. If we choose to put up with and tacitly support conspiracy theorists and folks peddling disinformation, that's a reflection on what we choose to do as politicians and who we are as leaders. Obviously, I'm going to trust in Canadians' understanding of the kind of responsible leadership that is needed right now. And I'm sure Canadians are watching what all politicians are doing right now and remembering who is choosing to stand up for what and for whom, and what choices they are making as leaders. I think through this pandemic, Canadians have seen and have a right to expect responsible leadership. And unfortunately, that's not what we've always seen from the likes of Aaron O'Toole or even more, Maxime Bernier.
Following up.
Oh, shout out.
Behavior you outlined today. What do you want to see the security forces on Parliament Hill and in downtown Ottawa do about the situation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make sure that people are safe, first and foremost, that small businesses, restaurants in Ottawa can get back to work, that citizens can go to their jobs, that parliamentarians can continue to do the important work of serving Canadians, of upholding our democracy. Yes, there is a right to protest. There is a right to make your voices heard loudly and clearly. There is not a right to shut down our democracy, our democratic processes. There is not a right to abuse, intimidate, and harass your fellow citizens who are trying to go about their business, trying to live their lives, and not necessarily in agreement with what you are doing.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question.
The next question is from Raphael Perrault. Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau.
Well, you know what, guys? I think we've
The
given
Minister of Transport
Justin
said
enough of a platform here.
that he wanted to
I think maybe we should
perhaps move forward with
turn his
a
volume down and maybe
vaccination
comment
mandate
on some of this stuff.
for
I agree.
truckers traveling across the border.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. That entire
that something that
speech
your,
and leading up to question
government is
time is a lot of
considering?
double speak.
And I don't know what it is. I ate my lunch and now I'm
As you
feeling a
know,
little nauseous. It's just
We've been
like
very
the way he
clear that we need as
blatantly
many people as possible
talking
to
about
get
these things as
vaccinated.
if he's
They've
like
brought in
villain,
vaccine mandates
demonizing a
for
group,
federal
but
public servants,
he could have just be as easily talking about
for those who want
himself
to travel by
when he's
airplane
talking,
or
right?
by train.
He's saying all these things that even we're agreeing with, but he's pointing them in the opposite direction. And it's like, but that's why we're here, because you're doing all these things that you just said we're apparently doing. You know, it's very interesting.
It's just all this political doublespeak and these generalizations. The way he and people around him, the people who support him, the way they manipulate language to make things sound positive when in fact it's extremely negative and divisive.
It needs to be stated. So, True North News this morning reported that Ottawa had indicated there had been no arrest made all weekend.
Yes.
So, where is this violence rhetoric that he's talking about? Like, they took three things that happened over the weekend: the Terry Fox statue, the war memorial, and whatever happened at that food kitchen in downtown Ottawa. And they just blew it up out of proportion.
And I might say something here. I don't see any video. I don't see any evidence. All we have is the person who runs that place smearing and criticizing and attacking and accusing. That's what we have. And I'd like some background information on that person, because I'd bet dollars to donuts the background will reveal something that might show some bias. And
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking
I'm just saying, okay, that was one person on the news making accusations. And the story was, I guess, that truckers went down there and there is audio of them saying they didn't know where to go get food because they weren't being allowed to go into some restaurants because they didn't want to wear masks or weren't able to wear masks, and they were being turned away from restaurants. So they weren't able to get food, so they were hungry, and they ended up at the food at what was it, a mission?
Soup kitchen.
Soup kitchen, right? Because they had no place else to go. So they went in there, and they're being accused of assaulting someone.
And
but no charges.
Screaming racial absurdities at a security guard employee.
Right.
Here, can you turn Justin's volume all the way off? That's enough.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
The way we get through this public.
And I'm going to tell everybody, he said, we'll always have your back. And the only way he's ever going to have your back is as he's throwing you into a gulag.
Or if he's on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, Chris, because he's been on the backs of the unvaccinated, the unclean.
Or even not even just that, but even like with the mandates and telling you and telling us who and how many people we can have in our homes for holidays and Christmas and stuff.
You know what's really disgusting is the way, and this always happens, we had really a lot of people down there expressing national pride, a lot of love, actually, from what I saw. People, it was like a festive atmosphere. No arrests, no violence, no evidence of violence at all. And yet here we are Monday morning, and because they wanted to focus on a couple of minor incidents,
Which we've
Yeah.
rectified a lot of these
Yeah.
things we've brought to the attention.
some of which was an outright lie, or a distortion of facts, and we can illustrate that. Now here we are. Instead of talking about all the positive things that happened over the weekend, we're sitting here defending, or talking about, or explaining, or investigating,
Exactly.
but just basically talking about this because it allows them to control the narrative.
Yeah.
And so now instead of meeting with truckers to try to do something productive, to come up with some constructive and positive ways to deal with this horror show that he has unleashed on the public over the last 2 years, that has destroyed lives, literally destroyed lives, and resulted in untold catastrophic harm and death because of suicides and drug overdoses, and as that have caused people to die, depression, kids losing, time in school. Instead of talking about those things and finding good, positive solutions to these serious problems, we're talking about stuff that they're using to deflect and smear and discredit and dismiss a huge swath of the Canadian public.
And
Yeah, definitely Adam Beans. Definitely a tactical error.
He's it's funny that he mentioned the flags and things like that. We have footage of individuals at Parliament Hill, and there's somebody who has a they have a Confederate flag or whatever, and people in the audience are telling him to go home. And there's nobody in the audience wearing a mask, but the individual with the Confederate flag is wearing a mask. Like it's
like a belly clava type of mask, not just like a mask, but like straight up a ski mask. Like I get it's cold, but yeah, I hear you. It raises a bit of suspicion. But like as you
nobody
remember,
else was wearing one in that video shot.
And when he was called out, he hung his head in shame and he left. They're like, yeah, man, like you don't belong. Like you can't be here. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, and then he walks off, right? Yeah, it's a lot like a comment section. Usually, sometimes you get a person who wants to rile things up, but if it's, usually the commenters will take care of it. That's what's nice about democracy.
The hate and the rhetoric that we're seeing out of Justin Trudeau is totally disgusting. This is why we are doing this, because we cannot let this man control the narrative. He does not represent Canadians. We got millions of Canadians that have poured all over Ottawa. We are sick of this garbage. Adam Beans in our comment section here has pointed out that throughout all the liberal protests that we've had over the years, you got people waving around communist flags. Communist regimes have killed and slaughtered millions of people. They don't even know how many people they've killed. People starving to death, people being sent to work camps to work to death. But this is why we're doing this. We're not standing for this anymore. The science is not my religion. I don't believe it is Rick Walker's, and I don't believe it is Christopher Baugh's either. So this is garbage. And this is why things erupted so badly on the weekend, because Justin Trudeau is slamming the blue-collar person, the blue-collar Canadian citizen. He's slamming them, and he's shaming them, and he's calling them garbage. But
and look at this. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but this Nazi flag crap, look at this photo. This is the one this one on the right-hand side. This is what's been circulating. First of all, it's not at Parliament Hill. These people were anywhere near the demonstration or the rally or whatever you want to call it down on Parliament Hill. I believe this was closer to one of the hotels near Parliament Hill. But look at these guys. Are these truckers? Look at the way they're dressed. Every one of them dressed in black. That's where have we seen that before?
Too many
Every
times.
one of them dressed in black. One Nazi flag. And you're telling me that this is the real deal? This has fake. This has false flag written all over it. These guys, I'm sorry, but this is a joke. This is a joke. It's laughable. I saw this. I just about fell off my chair laughing. These guys went down there. I want them all arrested to find out who they are, and I will guarantee these guys not with the convoy. Not with the convoy. Those guys couldn't drive a truck if their life depended on it. As I said before, I'd also lay odds that they don't even have driver's licenses because and if they do drive, as I said yesterday, they probably drive a Prius. Not a transport truck. Come on.
So
Open your eyes.
I found it interesting how he stated that Canadians had chosen this. Over 90% of you are vaccinated. Like, first off, that is not the case. As we had heard last night, we had a nurse who was fired from her position, where she had stated in the beginning there was 400 employees at this hospital who did not want to get vaccinated. And they were all coerced into vaccination. They only fired 18 out of 400 people. So 300 and some people had made decisions to not do that. But it's because of the policies and the bullshit that they're putting out there. This is hurting people. Even if they do it and they don't want to. This is hurting people. I've seen so many people hurt by everything that's going on. This is absolutely despicable. This is a shame on everybody who is a Canadian. So this goes to show you what champagne socialists run amok.
They've also distorted the facts on these other incidents. They said, and Trudeau's said, that they parked vehicles on the war memorial. And when I heard that, of course, you're left with this image of all these transport trucks parked haphazardly all over the war memorial as part of this protest. That is not what happened. Ottawa police released a statement. There were two vehicles. I believe they were SUVs. One might have been a minivan. There is a photo. I don't have it here, but we could probably find it at some point during the broadcast. Two vehicles parked on the on steps leading up to the war memorial. Two of them. So they were not properly parked, not supposed to be there. Police asked those people to move those vehicles, and they complied. That's the end of that story. That's what happened. They didn't realize the vehicles are not supposed to be there, so they moved them off and over someplace into the parking lot where they were more appropriately parked. That's what happened. But the way that it's portrayed, the way that they use the language, it makes it sound like we had all these vehicles parked with disrespect all over the war memorial.
Doing donuts. I think there's something we've miscalculated about. After watching the press conference by the main organizers of the truckers, I think we've miscalculated on something here. And that is that what we had seen in Ottawa this weekend is mostly people coming out in support of the truckers. The bulk of the truckers are going to probably just be staying with their rigs and not going anywhere. They have over $8 million. They have the ability to stay in Ottawa, and they have the ability to stay there for until 2024, until the money runs out. There was blatant lies and smears that the media had put out that their GoFundMe page was taken down and that they weren't receiving any more funds, and that is a direct attack on GoFundMe. Like, the media and the government want people to stop supporting the GoFundMe for the truckers. And so they put out a lie saying that, we're stopping the money.
Yes, it was a lie. Maybe we can bring up that news conference with the truckers and give them a bit of a platform here and let them say what they had to say last night.
Yeah, sure, I have it right here.
Kind of get off some of this negative crap. And that whole Terry Fox Memorial being desecrated, which was the word used by some media.
Yeah.
addressed this yesterday, all of this stuff, but I will bring up the photo of what happened to that memorial, so that we can put this in perspective. And I feel that perspective is important. That's what was done. People put a Team Canada hockey hat on him, on the statue. They put a Canadian flag on Terry Fox like a cape. And I remember photos of Terry Fox running with a Canadian flag draped on him like that. So it's not far off from what actually happened. And because the country is in distress, they put a Canadian flag upside down on there. And then they put a mandate freedom sign in his hands. That was the extent of it. No permanent damage. They didn't tear anything down.
In fact, the very touching part about this is people went there and they cleaned it. They cleaned and polished the whole statue. Which, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if the city of Ottawa or the federal government had went and sent their goons to go charge them for doing that. As you had often seen, like we've all heard stories about individuals who'll cut grass at a park and then they get fines or something stupid like that. So I do have the video here.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's a problem with my audio or not.
The audio is not really important. The visuals of what they're doing really is.
Oh, no.
The audio is extremely important for the news conference.
Yeah.
Why don't you throw the link over to me, Brendan, and I'll just bring it up here.
I have it. Let's see if the audio works.
Okay.
Oh,
Can you
for
hear,
that
gentlemen?
specifically. Sorry, I was thinking of a different one. It's very faint.
No audio. Just throw me the link here, Brendan, and I'll throw it up in the studio on this side.
Okay, one sec.
And with regard to the Terry Fox Memorial, we have a photo of a liberal doing doing exactly what they're accusing the other side of doing. And we'll try and find you that photo again as well. We had that up yesterday.
Hold up, sorry. I'm not so used to things on the computer anymore as I am with my phone.
So they're, in some cases, outright lying about some of these incidents, and they're distorting. And perspective is important.
Perspective is very important, and I think this. There you
Got
go,
it,
Rick.
private
It's in the private chat, Rick.
Okay.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Your perspective can only be granted by the amount of data you get, too. Whether you agree with it or not, or it makes sense at first, but definitely you need to get all sides of a story before you can make an actual informed decision. But doesn't seem to be what's happening this last couple of years either, right? So, and to even question it's kind of, you get demonized for it, which is strange, but it's the world we live in. Here we go.
Posting a few others. Kept putting stories.
Okay, let's rewind this.
Yeah, full screen it.
We omitted certain
Rick?
news agencies, and I guess I should cover this.
No, the.
I will.
Okay.
Including the Toronto Star and CBC, who were banned from this press conference. And the reason they were banned is twofold. First, this entire week, the CBC, Toronto Star, Yahoo
I'll be right back.
News was retweeting and reposting, and a few others, kept putting stories out that our GoFundMe was frozen or suspended because of nefarious right-wing truckers. You know, that was the dangerous people. And it was hysterical. Me and Tamara were talking. I remember one day when the Toronto Star story came out that GoFundMe has frozen the account, and I called her and I says, everything okay? She's like, yeah, I just got off the phone with them 45 minutes ago. They're great. They're helping out. Everything's going to be sorted out. That was purely just a fake story.
Yeah.
And was that fake story to sabotage the donations that were coming in? Probably. We'll see a lot of that sort of propaganda in media. And then when the Toronto Star put that cartoon that Jordan Peterson put up, that sort of extremism, we're not going to tolerate. So we know if we had invited the Toronto Star, CBC, all these mainstream news organizations, they always do. And Kean, I'm sure you've seen it many, many times. They'll come in with 5 people and they'll have these giant cameras and they'll take up half the floor space and bully everybody else. And that's not what this is about. This is about us coming together, talking to one another, answering any questions that you have. If we have the answer, we'll tell you. If we don't have the answer, we'll tell you. We don't know. And have a nice conversation with each other and go from there.
Can I ask, what's the status of the truckers? I had heard that not all of them got to the Hill yesterday. Some are stuck outside of the city still. What's going on? Where are they sitting? Are they well fed? What's going on?
The problem is when people ask the truckers, which truckers? There's so many convoys coming from different places. We've all lost track of them. There's a couple of convoys coming from Quebec alone, one that's coming from the Maritimes, a few from Western Canada, and they all got separated. I don't know if you saw the drone footage of the trucks, how many tens of miles long, and they were sitting for hours and hours just to make a right turn. So sections of them decide, okay, we'll turn around, we'll take a different route. And the Canadian infrastructure couldn't handle the number of truckers that were coming in mass in one direction. So that gives an idea of how many there were. We did have that issue last night where the truckers were held over on the highway and they couldn't get into Ottawa. Last I heard it was getting resolved. Do you know the status of it?
I've been speaking with the guys. A lot of them were able to get turned around, went back out to the truck stop, regroup.
Okay.
They're going to be coming back in smaller groups apparently.
Okay, yeah. So that's yes, no, all answers all at once. There's just such an overwhelming number of trucks that it's become a logistics nightmare, which is great. That's what we want. We want a logistics nightmare for the government because they solve all our problems, right? Well, they can solve this problem for us now.
This is an easy way to fix this.
Yeah,
super easy.
Yeah, that's right.
How long do you guys plan on staying in Ottawa? How long will this go? Is it till you get what you want?
Well, it's going to be summer soon, right? So right now, yeah, it's really cold, but we hang in there. The days are going to get longer. We can take this block party and put it in overdrive, have some dancing outside in the heat. So we're in this from the long haul.
More than 2 weeks.
Time limit. The thing is with trucks, it's interesting because they're designed to be on the road, especially the long haul ones, for an indefinite period of time. As long as you keep fuel in them, they can sit there for weeks and months. And now we have, I don't know, $8 million?
It's probably over 8.5 now.
So $8 million worth of fuel. So I don't know, 2023, 2024, I guess we can do. Right?
All right, those are my questions.
Next.
Andrew Lawton, True North. Since you brought up the money, what are your costs at this point that have been spoken for of the GoFundMe?
Well, we'll be using it primarily to pay some of these truckers. A lot of these truckers have lost their jobs and have nothing, right? So it's going to be primarily for that. And I guess we're going to have to look at rooms because if we have to stay, we may need some rooms and food and stuff like that. That's what it's primarily designed for. When we set it up, it was to cover the cost of the journey. So, yeah, primarily fuel. That's probably one of the biggest.
I mean, there's all sorts of other expenditures that will occur. So, for example, trucks do have regular things that occur. They may have DPF sensors or whatever it might be. That's why we say cost of the journey in the GoFundMe, because there's going to be some sort of miscellaneous costs we never even anticipated. One thing's for sure, the money's not for us. We're not touching it. It's not. This is for them. They're the ones who are making the sacrifice. They're the ones who are sitting there in their truck overnight and starting it every few hours to get some heat in the cabin. That's where the money's going.
Is any of it going to compensate truckers who have not been able to work or are not working because they're partaking in the convoy?
I guess that's to be determined. It depends if they're involved or their level of involvement in the journey coming here, right? That's really the primary focus. We also never anticipated that we would have this amount of engagement and support and donations. It's given us a little bit of flexibility, primarily allowing us to take over, to take this movement and extend it. Originally you get 20 grand, you get a few trucks, you come here, you hang out for a few weeks, you send a message to the government. But now for us, for blue collar people, this is kind of endless resources when it's focused just on that primary goal of fueling them, keeping them fed. A lot of them, we say keeping them fed. Most of these trucks, they have a house attached to them. So they have a fridge, they have protein bars and foods and non-perishables. So they can sit there for months. They're already taken care of. But if people need, we'll be helping them with that as well.
The Ottawa police confirmed yesterday not a single incident of violence reported, not a single injury. What's your response to the media that, generally speaking, put the narrative in the last week that this was just a powder keg waiting to explode?
Are those the same guys who said our GoFundMe was frozen? I don't know, fake news media? That's why they're not here.
Can I just jump in with something? Last night, a black shirt from the Ottawa Police,
Yes.
a ranking officer from the Ottawa Police was giving a press conference, and he was asked the same question, what about the January 6th movement? What about the violence? What about if they try and take government? And the Ottawa Police guy just sat there cool as cucumber, and he said, I understand what's going on in America. I understand what our American brothers are doing, but this is Canada. This is a peaceful country. We see no intent whatsoever coming from anyone who has any violent tendencies towards the government. So the Ottawa Police, God bless their hearts, that one guy dismantled the entire January 6th narrative, if you will. And I think it took him like 20 seconds. It was brilliant.
And we've been working with local law authorities all across the way, and they've all been fantastic, right? Like we got an escort through Ontario.
No, it was the Manitoba border. We were picked up by unmarked OPP.
Yeah.
And they continued us all the way through to Ottawa, the entire way. Full communication, full support. Hats off to
Chris was on the phone with them probably once
That's why
every
my
couple
voice
hours.
is gone.
Yeah, like they were fantastic.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Mandy Dalton, National Telegraph. Has anybody from Justin Trudeau's staff reached out to talk to anybody at all, or is he still hiding away?
What are you talking about? It's the weekend. Isn't he in Tofino or something? I don't understand something.
He's self-quarantining for his negative test, but he was exposed.
Well, he self-quarantined for a negative test, and then 24 hours later, he was going on a trip with his family.
Oh, I didn't
Pick
see
one.
that.
Which one is it? Right?
They whisked him away for his security, is what I was.
No, little snowflake.
So no one at all has reached out for any kind of statement.
Why would they? The
Just
entire
ignoring
world is
the
fixated
thousands
on
and
this.
thousands
We're
of
just
people.
we're just a little minority fringe.
Yes.
Yeah.
12 trucks.
12
trucks. 12 trucks.
Yeah.
12 trucks? Who said 12 trucks?
The Liberal government, isn't it? Who
I
said
think
that?
it was on the news media. I believe it was Sandy Ronaldo. Something.
Oh, maybe.
The
Yeah.
BBC said about 100 trucks arrived in Ottawa.
That's
Yeah.
good, right?
I think it's a race to the bottom to see whose reputation is going to be destroyed first. Politicians like Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, or the mainstream media. It's a tight race. Right?
And do you see this making a difference? Like ideally, yes, mandates will be dropped,
It
but
already has.
well, I saw in Saskatchewan.
They're getting rid of the COVID passport.
Ontario is pretty hard on their restrictions. They're one of the worst. Do you see them making a difference in Ontario? Or do
Well,
you
and
think
that's-
they're going to dig in for as long as they can?
You bring up something very interesting, which is we all talk about Justin Trudeau because we started with the mandates and the entry passport into Canada. I call it the Stasi passport. Okay, but let's not forget our provincial leaders. And all the provincial leaders that have been locking us down, you know what they are? They're conservative. So we're not going to play this game anymore that the liberals are good and the conservatives are, the liberals are bad and the conservatives are good. No, they're all horrible. All of them. They should be ashamed of themselves. So this is not a partisan movement. That's why you don't see political parties. They're all trying to posture. Aaron O'Toole showed up with a trucker. But if you look at even the picture they took, nobody around Aaron O'Toole is even remotely interested in the conversation. So the first thing is, I think we're going to see shifts, hopefully, within the direction of the Conservative Party. Aaron O'Toole can be yoinked out and replaced with somebody. And I think you're starting to see some waves also in the Liberal Party. That's why you notice they were floating stories about, well, maybe Chrystia Freeland would be the new leader, because good God, would be just as bad, if not worse. But at least there's some sort of shift. They're testing in terms of messaging. Is it time to get rid of Prime Minister Blackface? I mean, Trudeau.
Are you guys pleased? Maxime Bernier has sort of had a rally here in downtown Ottawa today. Are you associated with him at all? Are you pleased with the support he's given the convoy? What's your thoughts on the?
We are not associated. We took a vote as an organization. All the committee heads are the organizers, and we are not partisan. We had he reached out to us, and a couple other ones reached out to us and wanted to get up and speak, and we said no. That's not what we're about. This is a grassroots movement, and no politicians are going to represent us. I mean, they're kind of the reason we're in this mess in the first place.
And the last thing we want is to have this whole idea of unity amongst Canadians from across the political spectrum and the cultural spectrum, to have that be detonated by politicization. So we're trying to avoid that. This is for Canadians, not for political parties.
When Parliament resumes this week, are you guys expecting that the convoy that's clogging up Wellington is going to cause them any difficulties? Do you expect the Liberals to even show up to work when you guys are here? Will the Conservatives, have you any idea?
Well, I think on the Liberal side, you'll see our strong leaders hide behind Zoom, which is funny, an app that Google and Tesla said they will not allow on their platforms because it's spyware from the Chinese government. Yet our government is using it. Anyways, but so I anticipate them hiding behind Zoom, and the Conservatives, I anticipate them slowly trickling out. I have had people in the Conservative Party reach out to me, MPs who I've known for quite some time, quietly, we're supportive, and I'm like, that's great. You can get out there and show yourself and show that you're a leader, because you don't have a leader right now. So that, by the way, that would be my message to the Conservative Party. We all know Aaron O'Toole. Great. We look forward to meeting the leader of the Conservative Party.
So could I just, so I can get it on tape, could you guys state your names and your organization?
Sure.
Tamara Leach, Freedom Convoy, Freedom Convoy 2022, organizer, one of the co-organizers.
Can I spell your name?
Yes, of course. It's TAMARALICH.
Benjamin Victor, and I don't know, just a guy, drives a truck, do a few other things, but that's primarily my focus here.
Where did you come from?
Ontario. From Toronto.
Chris Barber. I'm a business owner, trucking company owner in Saskatchewan, cross border. I'm the guy that put all this kind of together with a few other people by an angry social media post.
Thank you. What is your last name?
Barber, BARBER.
And just one more question from me, kind of on a specific topic, but in general, I know a lot of people have kind of given up on humanity in general over the course of all this. But for myself personally, like on the convoy out here at the stop, seeing people going around giving out boxes and boxes of hearty sandwiches, bags made up, like it had us in tears, bags with kids drawing notes for the truckers and writing them letters on cookies. Like
it was so moving. And we were, that's gonna make me emotional, but we had so many people that would come up and hug us and just say, tell their stories about how they've lost everything, or their mother died alone, or this lady, she was from Ontario. She had a 12-year-old boy who has muscular dystrophy, and he was rapidly losing the mobility in his hips because he couldn't go to a swimming pool for his swimming therapy. But underneath all those stories that are so heartbreaking is just this determination and this resilience, right, of the Canadian people. And I mean, we've already won, because look at all those people out there. Yesterday, I've never seen so many smiles, right? Everyone's got hope again, and everyone's feeling pride to be a Canadian again, which is something that we haven't felt for so long, which is really important. So in that sense, we've already won.
Do you think this was more of a cultural moment in Canadian history than it was political?
Absolutely.
So you guys oppose the vaccine mandates, but not necessarily vaccines.
I want to be clear, we're not
You're not
anti-vax.
anti-vaccine.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's been a narrative that has been put out since the start.
Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated.
You're fully vaccinated. Okay.
So.
And so you're just opposed to the vaccine mandates. So my question is, for a lot of these truckers, there's a lot of cross-border trucking that happens between the U.S. and Canada. And so how are you, they're going to need to prove that they're vaccinated when they go into the U.S. So how are you dealing with that issue?
Well, what I explained when I was on Tucker Carlson,
Okay.
From some of our sources, that the U.S. government, the Biden administration, had zero interest in this program. It was the Trudeau government that lobbied and reached out to the Biden administration and encouraged them to adopt this process, this platform, just like in Canada. So the Americans have us to thank for it. And as I explained, we don't know. Everybody's trying to figure out, people on the inside, what were the terms of the deal? Why is the U.S. accommodating Canada? We don't know. Are they sharing data amongst each other? Is stuff being funneled to the NSA, and they're going to use that to create a Canadian database? We don't know.
Well, while the Supreme Court struck down Biden's mandate about a couple of weeks ago, that's not going to apply to Canadian truckers. They'll still have to show proof of vaccination when they enter the U.S. So how then, are they, I'm just trying to understand how your opposition to vaccine mandates then applies to what truckers are going to be confronted with when they go to the U.S.
Well, I think what you'll see is there will be, once things change here, if the mandate and the passport is removed from Canada.
Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think Justin Trudeau will have a change of heart?
If he wants to eat, yeah, because this is the supply chain saying we're not doing it. And I think once that change happens here, that will just be further motivation for the United States. I mean, all they're doing is the Biden administration is making the opposition stronger. And we know who that opposition is, and we don't want to say that word because the mainstream media will lose their mind. But they're just making that opposition stronger.
Can I interject something here? Just as well, you just mentioned the supply chain. The trucking industry is the supply chain at the end of the day. About 60% of everything across the border carried by trucks. All your food carried by trucks. You got a phone? It was in a truck at some point. Before the pandemic, and this goes back more than 5 years, the trucking supply chain itself in Canada was suffering. They can't get parts, they can't get tires, they can't get electronics. The price of this stuff is going through the roof, and a good deal of it is because Chinese mainland companies control most of the parts industry now. Brake drums for a Class 8 truck are getting hard to find. Tires are hard to find. All the little black boxes that make the three main computers on a Class 8 truck work are becoming impossible to find. Also, the cost. It used to be $20 for a headlamp and a truck driver and a Phillips screwdriver, the number 3 bit. 20 minutes, $20, and he goes. Now, if he blows a headlamp, he's got to go into the dealer, spend $1,000 Canadian for a headlamp assembly with an LED module and a wiring harness to replace it, and he can't do it himself. So I did an interview with Richard Surrett on Saga 690 AM. It's been posted on the internet if you want to go look for it. We explained in detail how the trucking industry in Canada is being slowly strangled. And the single biggest problem is parts are not available, and the parts are phenomenally expensive.
And I'll give you a direct,
and this is China's hand on them.
I'll give you a direct example. I just blew my turbo last month on my truck, which happens over time. I got the last turbo in the entire province. And normally it would have been X number of thousands of dollars. It was 20% more. And that was the only one I could get. So what a lot of us have been doing as well is any sort of foreseeable maintenance we would need in the next year, we're just buying it now and either stocking it or putting it on the truck now, because we don't know if we're going to be able to get parts, 6 months from now.
And this problem is 5 years old. The pandemic just made it worse.
Yeah.
I do have a question. In Quebec, we've seen some of the worst mandates anywhere in the world, really. I've noticed there's a lot of Quebecers protesting today and yesterday. What's been the response from the Quebec trucking industry? Have you noticed it's been stronger than you expected? Or?
Yes. I was in Massachusetts last week, and I was at a destination waiting for an hour, 2 hours. And there was another Canadian, a Quebec trucker who came in. So we ended up having coffee together in his cab. He's like, his English was okay. He's like, I need to practice English. Come. But yeah, he was telling me how ridiculous that province is. The lunatic that is running that province. Aviva Fry has been covering this online. The guy's got to be thrown out of office and be charged on crimes against humanity. It's absolutely unacceptable. But yeah, the entire truck industry in Quebec has been very, very supportive. That's why we had a convoy coming from there. Yeah. And because of him, we have him to thank, I believe, for the extent of the unification of Quebecers with the rest of Canada, with Albertans. You know how many times I saw people from Alberta and Quebec yesterday just coming together, talking with each other? It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
We were at the Chateau Laurier yesterday chanting "Liberté, Liberté," and so here's a bunch of Anglos, a bunch of people from Ontario standing next to Quebecois folks with an Alberta flag chanting "Liberté," and it's kind of like, oh, that was Canadian. And a guy holding a Quebec flag with a hockey stick. I almost died.
And what's so amazing about it is, I grew up in Toronto.
Yeah.
I live in downtown Toronto. I always had family in Alberta, in Calgary. We've discussed it before. But I always loved going to Quebec.
Yeah.
So I was always in this weird sphere where I'd go to see my family in Alberta, and they go, oh, Toronto thinks it's the center of the world, and Quebec wants all the transfer payments. All of that is dying now. And they're realizing that it's these lunatics in our government that are causing all of it. But all of us on the ground, yeah, we have cultural differences, but we respect our cultural differences, and they're features. They're features that we can embrace of each other. So yeah.
One of the ironies of this is that truckers from Quebec are going to be a part of a Canadian cultural moment where we reestablish unity in Canada.
That's right.
And if that doesn't bend your mind, I don't know what will.
I have another question. I've been looking at Twitter a lot, and those who oppose the convoy, they'll call you guys the Karen convoy. They'll be like, why don't?
They're so funny.
No, they say they'll say, why don't they just take the vaccine? Why, from the conversations you've had, why for these people, why do you think that their choice, is so important? And what would you have to say to people who simply have trouble understanding why somebody is choosing?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. Firstly, there's not one reason. We're all individuals, so people have different reasons for it, right? I have friends who had the first vaccine and they had this major adverse reaction and they had started getting bruises all over them. They went to their doctor and their doctor said, you know what, just don't take the next one. I'm not sure why, let's just hold off. So there's those people. Then there's other people that I know, like the guy who broke the story on the convoy, Mark Petroni. He was the first one ever to cover it, remember?
Yeah.
He would get vaccinated, but he's not going to have the government to tell him what to do. No, I am my own autonomous person. So there's a whole bunch of variables and different reasons why people who don't get the vaccine haven't gotten it, and that's their choice.
So Benjamin, how much support did you receive from the different communities from Canada, like immigrant communities, especially those who escaped, from the totalitarian governments and come to Canada and feel like, oh, things are changing also in Canada?
What's crazy is the primary communities, because it's not just one, that have been supportive of us from a geopolitical and human rights standpoint has been people who came here from Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people from Eastern Europe descent, whether they're from Poland or Belarus or whatever, that are in the trucking industry. We think, oh, that's just your average white Canadian. No, talk to him. Hear his accent. He's from Eastern Europe. And those people haven't forgotten socialism and the direction that we're going down, and they're the most concerned. So you see all the videos on social media.
Guys, I think we should keep this running just because
people saying, I want my
I think it's
freedom.
important to
I
let
came to
people
Canada
see the
for freedom.
unedited
I'm not
entire
giving up my freedom so
news
easily.
conference. Agreed.
And call me a white supremacist sort of thing, and mocking the Twitter bots.
Have you had substantial support from that community? Because I saw on Twitter a lot of people trying to debunk that, saying, sure, there's 60% of the trucking industry here in Canada, but most of them are vaccinated and they're not part of this protest. What do you have to say to that?
I don't know. I think that's more of the media narrative, which can be summarized with "Don't believe your lying eyes," right? And there's so many people from these various communities that want basic freedoms in Canada. That's what we came here for. Justin Trudeau, that's your identity, freedom. That's what these people are telling you. And those have been some of the most powerful voices to remind Canadians that is our fundamental.
I have been struck by the diversity of just people who've shown up, children, young, old, people of color, black, white, Chinese Canadian, you name it. I've seen everybody there. But also we've had some reports of some problematic photos that have been circulating on social media of someone walking around with a Confederate flag and someone else walking with a swastika on a flag. What do you have to say to that? Are those people part of your movement?
Okay, so
Yeah.
first thing,
Yeah.
Chris is Canadian. She's Métis. I'm Jewish. Okay. And I was mortified last night when I saw there's an organization called CIJA, and CIJA is run by a guy who thinks he's going to be as a liberal senator. His name is Shimon Fogel, and he'll do anything and say anything that Trudeau does to get him into that position. So I go to CIJA. These are the leaders of my community. They're pathetic. They really are. They're what's fueling anti-Semitism in Canada. Because somebody pulls up some random, we call it the hoax hate. You hear this hoax hate all the time. Oh, somebody painted a swastika on a trash can. It's backwards, right? So they're clearly not committed to the cause, right? Yeah, people troll, do stupid things, whatever. Right. Who cares? But what do? Anytime you see something like that, the leaders of that community, they're outraged. This is disgusting. And for the rest of us, it's fueling the hate towards the rest of us. So ignore it. Really. These are political hacks that they hide behind the veil of activism for the community. And you know what they do for the community? Nothing but make it worse for all of us. Whereas those of us regular people just want to come together and unify. So you want diversity? Guess what? You have diversity right here. And we don't care because we're just Canadian. That's it.
What about, there was reports that Antifa would be sending in instigators. Have you seen any evidence of anything like that? Anyone sent in to instigate? Like I've been telling everyone, don't take the bait just in case,
We've heard of people defacing monuments or urinating on war memorials and that sort of stuff. That's not our people.
That's
we would
not
never
our
do
people.
that. Nobody
No.
associated with that is in our group.
And the other thing that's interesting, I mentioned on stage during the speech that this news agency or national, whatever it's called, the guy who keeps messaging me won't leave me alone. He sent me the Terry Fox controversy. What Terry Fox controversy? They put a piece of paper or a plaque or whatever. It was a printout that said "Mandate Freedom" and a Canadian flag. If you think that's controversial, I think you need to leave Canada and move to China, right? Because that is not controversial. That is the spirit of us. And guess what? There's some of us in Canada who still have a sense of humor, right?
And so this convoy, I know it's regarding the vaccine mandates in general, or in specific, but is it just for vaccine mandates or all restrictions like the masking, the work at home?
Everything.
And that's been one of the most beautiful things that we've seen here, because all these stops and all these people are coming together, and you can see them smiling, right?
Yeah.
We went through Headingley and Winnipeg, and that was still our biggest.
There
was thousands.
Winnipeg
and
area took
on the side of the road was some beautiful native drummers, and there was Catholic nuns and standing beside, some lovely Hutterite ladies, and these people of all these different ethnicities and cultures that are coming together. And it was moving.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
And you know what I think the CBC was upset at about the War Memorial? There was a truck parked in a certain area of the War Memorial on a pad. That's the pad that the media usually parks their trucks at. So they're probably upset that we took their parking spot.
Yeah, just by way.
There's a Twitter.
And the vehicles were moved after police asked them to be moved.
What some others have done, the National War Memorial, have said their own watch around it. Other protesters taking it up themselves to keep up the trash and just want my editor just wants me to confirm that's true. That's something.
I saw them as we walked by this morning.
Yeah, I've actually
Say what?
That there's some folks from this movement have parked up next, not on the War Memorial property, but next to it, and just standing around, just keeping an eye on it.
I've also seen a video
They said,
happening.
yeah, the command center sent a team just to keep an eye on it, just to make sure, because we know it's a fake news story. We're fighting. We're fighting two fights. One, we're fighting the Trudeau government, the mandates, and the passports. But the other is we're fighting the smears from the dirty smear merchants, otherwise known as legacy media.
Which has started right from the start.
Yeah,
right?
from the very beginning. So if there's another lesson we can all learn from this, legacy media, turn it off. Just ignore it. It's there's nothing true there. It's exclusively narrative journalism at this point.
Just on the note of the different community representations, I was wondering if you could speak about the Indigenous aspect on this, and not just the volume, but specifically the why. I mean, what are the issues that they're bringing to this that might be distinct from issues other communities are bringing to these mandates and restrictions?
Well, I think, for example, I connected with the clan mother when this all started from the Northwest Territories, and she was with us at the service today. Her and another clan mother from Gift Lake. And I just think that it's so important because they are such a huge part of our history. We have a prime minister who has been promising clean drinking water on these reserves since before he was elected, and still nothing's been done, right? And I think it's important. We have to support them and we have to help them, and it's time to work together. And their message needs to be heard, and their message needs to be understood. Yeah.
So you would consider yourselves allies to your movement is also a movement for something greater than just the mandates. You
It's
also
for
want
it's for every
for
Canadian.
clean water and
Yes,
so forth.
yeah, like we have a lot of work to do, and we've been in lockdown for so long, and people have lost so much. We have a lot of healing to do, but so do our First Nations people, and we can only do that if we do it together.
And just on the vaccine mandate in particular, I heard the clan mother this morning had spoken a little bit about how, you know, Indigenous women in particular have significant reason to be distrustful of the government. And is that something you're hearing broadly even across different Indigenous communities?
I should have brought Millie up here.
Yes,
She could have
yeah.
spoken to that actually.
Yeah, exactly.
From her, yes, yeah. I mean, she when she was speaking this morning, she was talking about the importance of women in their culture and in all of our cultures, because we are the life givers, right? And the importance of our men to stand up for us and protect the women and the children. And we've kind of lost that. I mean, I think if you listen to what the government has been doing, what I hear from the government anyways, is they're trying to pull that family unit apart, right? Just like they're trying to pull and divide and tear so many different aspects of Canadians apart. And that's not what a leader does. A leader brings people together, that if they don't destroy them and tear them apart.
Or call them names.
Or call them names. Jagmeet Singh's tweet. Oh my gosh.
Well, he's irrelevant, I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Just to clarify, so you're a strictly non-partisan movement, but you would like to affect politics at the margin. So in the sense that you would want to see something different happen with the Conservative Party, for example, as you mentioned earlier. But given the support that you've had, where does this take you into the future? Because do you see yourselves evolving into a political organization at some point? I mean, to effect change, you kind of have to get into politics, right? You know, if you want
To a degree. I mean, this is not going to be another political party.
Yeah.
We're not going in that direction. But that doesn't mean we can't coalesce around the ideas of this movement of unity and be the strong voice for Canadians to put pressure on our entire political class that has failed us.
Mhm.
They're all incompetent, right? So they're going to need a little nudge here and there. So they can sit back and try to ignore us as much as they can. And you know what's going to happen? More and more. I have media requests from all over the world, from Latin America, to England, parts of Europe, Australia. They're all trying to get some sit down time with us to talk. If they think they're going to ignore it, great. You know what? Something is going to come up in that vacuum and replace them. So if they don't realize the amount of opportunity they have to become a voice for change, then that just kind of proves my point of their incompetence. But somebody will. What we want is we want a good, capable political class of people. Like, I have no interest in office. I have no interest in running for office. She doesn't. We're just not. That's not our sphere. But we would like to have good people in there, and we can help pave the path for those people when they start to listen. Right now, they're not listening. Well, they're not listening, but maybe those horns outside of Justin Trudeau's office might change that.
They're hard to ignore.
Do you think the political elites have underestimated the anger and frustration in the country?
Oh, big time. Oh, big time. Big time.
You mentioned that you want to meet the leader of the Conservative Party, and it's certainly not Aaron
Yeah,
O'Toole.
whoever that is,
There's been a few MPs that have come out to meet with the convoy, and a few MPs that have been quite vocally supportive of the convoy. Is there anyone that you would like to see lead the Conservative Party, if not Aaron O'Toole? Pierre?
Leslin, Pierre, maybe. I think if the Conservative Party is smart, which they're not, because I was a candidate in the past, so I know those people. Love some of them, but they're really not bright. If they were smart, they would pull Aaron right now, get him out of there. They would put in an interim leader, whether it's Pierre or Leslin, and we all think that Pierre resonates with the vast majority of Canadians in his opposition to Justin Trudeau. He's been very effective. Would he be effective as a leader of the country? That I don't know, but definitely in opposition, he's been great. I think if they pulled Aaron immediately and they went into a snap election as quickly as they can, bring down the government, and they campaigned with an interim leader with the option of maybe running, I think his career would end very, very quickly. And if they don't, the fact that they don't see that opportunity in front of them is crazy to me. And it's so plainly obvious.
Thanks.
I mean, we're kind of here today with Aaron O'Toole because Canada lacks true political accountability. We don't have recall legislation. We don't have proper primaries. Do you think that really in order for this to not be in this situation again, where, a lot of Canadians, millions of Canadians, really don't have a voice in Parliament, do you think that significant reforms have to be made to our political or electoral system?
I'm going to say a very unconservative thing and say yes. Yes, we are living with not quite a medieval system, but we are living with an antiquated system that needs to be somewhat modernized. I think I have learned so much from this woman about the Native communities and the Native experience in Canada. And, as conservatives, we're often, I don't want to say dismissive, but we just don't understand their experience that they have. But I think they're indicative of exactly what you're talking about, that we need to modify the system somewhat, make it more open, more transparent, because right now it's run by lobbyists, and the lobbyists control who becomes a candidate for whichever, but it's not unique to any party, it's all of them. So yeah, I think I agree with you 100%.
You just raised a point too about Canadians lacking a voice. So here's the dirty secret about the Canadian government and the way it's represented. There's 100% of people in Canada who are allowed to vote. So that's everybody that's on the Canada Elections Act list. So you're a registered voter, great, that's 100%. Justin Trudeau just became Prime Minister, and around 21% of registered voters in Canada voted for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. 80% of registered voters in Canada did not vote for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. Now, in fairness, 30% of them didn't vote at all, so that's their issue. But the reality is Justin Trudeau's mandate, as he calls it in Parliament, rests on the shoulders of 21% of Canadians. So when he talks about fringe minorities, my point to Mr. Trudeau would be, sir, you are the fringe minority. You are the 20%. It's the 80% of Canadians who you're not representing that have the problem. So the fringe minority is Prime Minister Trudeau, and that's Canada Elections Act numbers.
I have a more personal question for the two of you now. I've seen on Instagram, on Twitter, there's a lot of people calling you guys white supremacists. You said, you're a Métis and you're Jewish. How does it personally feel to be attacked in that way, to be really called something that you're really not? Like, are you upset, angry? Do you not mind at all? Like, how do you feel about that?
For me, it's a combination between obnoxious and hysterical. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes it's the funniest thing ever, because I don't care. Like, I'm very pro free speech. People should be able to say whatever they want, and I have the choice whether or not I'm going to engage and respond or not. I don't need the government to control that for me, right? That's not their business. They're there not to protect us. They're there to protect our rights, which is what they're negligent in, right? They've completely abandoned the charter, which is about our rights, and they think they're the ones there to coddle us. That's not their job. So yeah, it's hysterical and obnoxious. But me personally, I don't get upset. Now that's me. However,
I haven't been paying attention, honestly. I know what they're saying. And I guess my father always said if they're talking about you, they're leaving somebody else alone. And I know who I am. And obviously they're stretching, right? Because they don't know me. They don't know my background, right? And I know this convoy has been a massive undertaking. I mean, all the logistics and everything that has to be worked out, I choose not to even read it or look at it. Every time somebody will text me something and I just tell them stop. Like, we have to be focused. We have a big job to do here. And I'm not going to let the negativity affect it.
And it's also
we just got the biggest convoy in history out here safely with him leading it. You know what I mean? So we have to stay focused and we have to stay
Just
on
a
target.
couple of logistic questions on that. How many people two in particular, how many people would you say are part of your core organizational team or committee?
Oh, God, it's big.
Oh.
How many? Between the control
road
center
captains,
and
we
the
have
captain?
roughly about 2 road captains per province. So there's them. Then of course we have a social media team. You have to understand, we had to put together an organization very, very quickly. So there's so many people involved.
It's roughly 2 weeks.
Yes.
I think, is it fair to say the core group is about 40 to 50 people?
Yes.
If you go out one chain of command.
And is
out,
that core group including your captains?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That
So
if
you
you
say
go out one circle of analysis, you go into hundreds because there's all kinds of people who are volunteering to do work. So at the truck stop, Herb's Travel Plaza in Van Cleek Hill, whole bunch of people doing the adopt a trucker thing. And a lot of those people just took it upon themselves to say, okay, what do you need? I'll help, I'll organize, I'll print posters, I'll do this. So there's kind of core group, first layer of analysis or first layer of chain of command, if you will, out. And then beyond that, there's the third layer, which goes into the thousands and no one knows. By way of interest, I mean, the Sikh community, Jagmeet Singh has made some of the most vicious comments ever about white supremacists and all this. The organization that did the thing that called the three of us, myself, Ben, and Tamara, white supremacists, I just put on record, is funded by Justin Trudeau. So enough of that. But I've noticed the Sikh community is out in huge numbers at all the truck stops, handing out food, handing out blankets. And it's like, it's organic. It's coming from the Sikh community. It's not coming from the convoy. Nonetheless, they're a part of the team. So there, like I said, there's like multiple layers of people helping out.
Yeah, what Chris wants to also comment on is go to adopt-a-trucker.ca. So it's adopt-a-trucker.ca. People have been volunteering their homes and their beds for truckers who need a place to stay or food or whatever. That's really the conduit space where they can go to if they want to, contribute their house overnight, if they have something they want to contribute. Also registration forms for more trucks who want to come, because at some point we need to start getting them on a database. We have a bunch of them now. I don't know how many tens of thousands. We stopped counting because we just got overloaded. So that's going to be the conduit where people will be able to communicate and donate their homes and food and whatever.
And just if I can, the other logistic question, the most controversial, contentious thing that will ever be discussed, the count. Have you been given from law enforcement, or do you have your own count of vehicles or people?
We lost track.
I've been trying to get the road captains all in one room this whole entire week. It's like herding cats.
When we separated, we gave Ontario the shill for the North Road on Highway 11. We gave 17. We had 480 vehicles in the South Road. I would imagine that the group of us was split into two, so we were roughly 1,000 vehicles coming across Canada from the west.
Yeah.
And that's just one small convoy.
100 kilometers long.
Starting point would be how many hotel rooms are there in Ottawa?
Exactly. You know what? And you laugh. That is the indicator, because we were on the phone with some of these, supporting role for all of us, and a couple of them were on the phone looking at hotels to hotels to book, and in real time they were watching hotel by hotel being booked up.
Yeah.
So that's got to tell you something, right?
You'd asked a question about whether this is a political moment or a cultural moment. At the moment, it's a global cultural moment. Just by way of explanation, I'm ex-military, ex-intelligence. I worked for the RCMP for 7 years as an intelligence contractor, doing counterterrorism and investigations into politicians and
host
judges.
of the Quiggin Report podcast, by the way. Go to thequigginreport.com. like, share, and subscribe.
Okay, I'm also ex-PCO. I used to work for the Intelligence Assessment Secretariat, which provides intelligence advice to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. So I'm part of that group. But I've got and I'm also an ex-central banker. I did risk analysis for the G10 central bank. So I am getting things from around the world, from Australian journalists, risk advisors for major European financial institutions. What prompted me to talk is I know a guy who's an actual samurai, not some guy who thinks he's a samurai, but an actual sword-carrying samurai. And he saw the picture of the clan mothers this morning. So you've got samurai supporting this. It's just unreal. Convoys in Europe, convoys in Italy, convoys in Australia. Donald Trump, God bless his heart, came out yesterday at a rally and said, did you see those Canadian truckers? They're doing more for freedom in America than American leaders are doing for freedom in America. And you're just kind of like, okay, here we go. It is a global cultural movement which is pushing back against Build Back Better, against cultural Marxism, against progressivism, against Klaus Schwab, against Bill Gates, against the World Economic Forum. For everybody that says the Great Reset and all that stuff is a hoax, there is a book called COVID-19 and the Great Reset written by Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum. Just so you'll know, Prime Minister Trudeau on his website supports the Great Reset. Our beloved Minister of Finance, also known as our Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Christy Freeland, is on the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum. So when people say, I don't understand where Trudeau's going, what's he doing? Why does he do all these things? There's an agenda. It's the progressive agenda. It's the post-national agenda. It is the Build Back Better agenda of Mr. Biden, the American president, and Kamala Harris, the vice president. So what you've accidentally done or deliberately done or whatever, Tamara, she helped organize my tour in Alberta, which is how I got mixed up in this. If we don't all wind up in jail. Anyway, we have put a finger, I think, on the pulse of the people of the world. So I made that comment to you about Justin Trudeau is the minority because he represents 21%. Every other country has the same problem. What's being represented here, I think, is the 80% who are tired of being voiceless, tired of being told they're bad, tired of being told to shut up, and tired of being told they're going to be restricted. And what you've done is you've hit the moment at the perfect time.
If you had some final words to not politicians or media, but to Canadians who may or may not support this convoy, why are you doing it in just a few sentences?
We're doing it because we need change. We need to be unified for the first time. And we need to understand the enemy is not each other, whether it be our religion or race or culture. That's not the enemy. We're all a unified country. The enemy or the problem, let's say, is the political class who are pushing us into serfdom. And if you don't speak up now and you don't get engaged, this is not going to end. And this is your opportunity. Whether they completely understand or they're pro-vaccine or they're anti-vaccine, that's not the point. The point is your basic freedoms. And if you want to maintain your basic freedoms, this is the movement that is there for you to grasp, to help.
Thank you.
Just one more quick thought on the global cultural movement you talked about.
And I think that that's it for that news conference. That was an unedited, unfiltered look at the complete news conference, the first one held by the truckers, the people sort of leading this thing. They have some organization, and those people at this point are the spokespeople for the Trucker Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. Any thoughts, Brendan?
First off, it's worth pointing out that the people leading this, they're Jewish and Métis, which don't really fit the bill of the narrative they're trying to make us swallow, that these are a white supremacist group that are trying to take us all down. This is what an amazing contrast between the press conference we heard with Justin Trudeau and the press conference we've heard with these guys. These guys are saying we need unity in the country. We need to come together. We need to stop hurting people. You heard Tamara Lich comment on stories about all the people that the lockdowns have hurt. And we could go on and on forever about how much damage has been done to the human condition ever since all of this has started. But we have a positive message here that the elite political class is not here to help the blue-collar person. People who get up every day to take their kids to daycare and go to work and pick their kids up and go home and have all the things in life. Like, life is not supposed to be this complicated. We're stuck on this path of zero COVID for so long, and it's not achievable. Everything public health has thrown at us is garbage. It doesn't work.
What did you think about the tone of the Prime Minister's address?
The tone was snooty. It was arrogant, which I guess is kind of the same thing. And it was very fear-mongering. There's like, you need to be afraid of these people. They desecrate monuments, and they have Nazi flags. First off, it's like, when did liberals ever care about statues? Like, never, right? And then now they're clearly like some weird things about the flags that were spotted in Ottawa, and all these people were booed off of the hill anyway. So they're lying. They don't have the full picture on it. He's the man in the high castle who's basically just trying to pit everybody against each other, trying to make a narrative that says all of Canada is against these people, but that's not true. The truckers had driven across Canada and had turnouts of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people at every overpass, every township, every town, every city along the way. Massive outpouring of support for these people. I think one of the biggest things, I've said this earlier, but just in case anybody hasn't heard, a lot of what we're seeing in Ottawa right now does not reflect this group of truckers, because this group of truckers is in it for the long haul. We're seeing a lot of people park in for the weekend, and then they're going to go home and back to their regular lives. We had spoken to Carla last night.
Sorry, Brendan, I think maybe we lost your audio. What we've seen is a lot of distortion, some straight up lies from the mainstream media, and certainly from Justin Trudeau regarding some of the incidents or apparent controversy in Ottawa surrounding the truckers' convoy. This controversy surrounding the Terry Fox Memorial, people are clutching their pearls and need their smelling salts because as we've seen, some people put a Canadian flag on the Terry Fox statue, and the people opposed to the convoy don't like that. We did find this photo online of a Liberal supporter. I'm not sure who this gentleman is. We have to dig in and find a little bit more about it. But he put a gay pride flag, or someone put a gay pride flag in the hands of a Terry Fox statue with some flowers. And there's a Liberal paddle ball toy in his hand as he stands beside the Terry Fox statue poses for a photo. So, yeah, the hypocrisy just continues. And we also saw a video of the incident where they said people were dancing on the war memorial. The video that I saw, and if someone has other video, please send it to us because I've not seen it. But if there's other video, send it to us. But I did see video of a person who walked up the steps of the war memorial, turned, shouted the word freedom while standing on the steps of the war memorial, and then stepped off. And they said that was dancing. And there was a post on, I believe it was Instagram, where I saw that video. But that was the extent of anything that I saw, even coming close to what they claimed was an incident involving protesters dancing on the war memorial. And with regard to the parking on the war memorial, as you saw, there was like a parking pad or patio or an area for people to gather in front of the war memorial that's paved with paving stones, and 2 vehicles had been parked there where the media would often park, or police vehicles or service vehicles, and they asked those vehicles to move. 2 of them, I believe it was an SUV and a minivan, and when police asked them to be moved, people complied and just moved them a few feet into the parking lot. And that was the extent of that. But they just lost it. The critics lost it over that. They've been looking for anything, any little thing they can find to smear this whole thing. And the whole incident at the soup kitchen, we talked about that as well. The stark contrast between the carefully chosen, carefully crafted words, distorting things from the Prime Minister, where he's clearly trying to divide the truckers by suggesting that 90% of the truckers have done the right thing by getting vaccinated, and these people in the convoy don't represent you. Yet we know a lot of the truckers in the convoy have been vaccinated, and the issue isn't about being anti-vax, it's about pro-choice. Further comments, Brendan?
Yeah, and we all know people in our lives who have been coerced to receive the jab. We know we know lots of people in our lives who have done that. A lot of people are saying it's the unvaccinated that are hurting people. It's a lot of people who are saying it's the anti-maskers that are hurting people. But we all know people who have died alone, who've lost their jobs, children who have been stifled with their development and everything like that. This is enough. All these things that have hurt people is the government. The government has caused 4 times more harm than COVID has.
I would agree that these government mandates, everything the government has done has been ineffective. And in terms of controlling or stopping COVID, this whole notion that we were going to stamp out the virus, it was a fool's errand from the very beginning. Many doctors around the world tried to tell them that, but they were silenced. And this approach has clearly done more harm than good. And that's because of depression, suicides, drug overdoses, lack of access to medical services because hospital services were shut down because of concerns about COVID, not because there wasn't enough capacity. And now they're using a certain group of people as a scapegoat. And if you can't look at the graphs and look at the numbers and realize that the accusations that this certain group of people that didn't do the thing that they wanted them to do are to blame for the ongoing and increased caseload and the ongoing death rate and the continued pressure that is being placed on the healthcare system, if you can't see that it's statistically impossible for the small group of people that they're blaming to be blamed for it, then you just are blind, because it is impossible. You can't get 90% compliance and get more of what you had before. It doesn't work that way. If this had been working, we would have been seeing less and then a little bit less and less and less. And we're getting more and more and more and more. Thoughts, Brendan?
I wish I knew where all of this was going. Like, I think today is the signal or the beginning of something that's going to be long and difficult.
With regard to that, I do see how this is going to unfold, I believe.
Okay.
Here's what I think is going to happen. And there was some comment on this, I think, from the mayor of Ottawa yesterday. He referred to the costs of dealing with this. And as of at 7:28 last night, police in Ottawa issued this media release. And the media release says, Throughout the weekend, the Ottawa Police Service and its partners have been actively and patiently managing a well-funded major demonstration in the downtown core. We have seen multiple cases of disruptive, inappropriate, and threatening behavior from demonstrators. So the notion that police have your back when you're a demonstrator, or that these demonstrators anyway, think again. They do not have your back. They have public safety in mind, and they are going to do what their bosses tell them to do. And whether you're a police officer taking orders from senior officers or a senior officer taking direction from your police services board and municipality or provincial government or the federal government or whomever, there's somebody above you. But the point is, you see the change in the language here already. Police are working with organizers to facilitate the safe departure of individuals and vehicles to ensure safety. Everything always is done with police around safety. Police are aware that many demonstrators have announced their intention to stay in place. This will continue to cause major traffic noise and safety issues in the downtown core. We urge all residents to avoid travel to the core. So they're already beginning to set this up where they're becoming less patient. They've tolerated it over the weekend when this party phase of it has unfolded, when the bulk of the people have been there, when you have a huge crowd and there isn't a lot you can do to disperse that many people. But it's Monday, people are going back to work. Now police begin to take a less tolerant approach to this. Police have avoided ticketing and towing vehicles so as not to instigate confrontations because they had too many people down there with demonstrators. Still, confrontations and the need for de-escalation has regularly been required. They're changing the tone. Along with the safety issues, safety again, always with police, everything they do is predicated and justified through the lens of safety. Costs to businesses and social costs to Ottawa Police continues to tally the financial costs of the policing costs, which are estimated at more than $800,000 a day. So they've come up with this number, safety, cost. If you work in the downtown core, please plan to work from home if possible. This is all being done as released as a public service announcement, but the messaging here is becoming clearer, and through that messaging, you can see what the strategy of the government will be. Please adjust your plans to the downtown core. If your children attend school in the downtown area, please check with them to see if the school is open tomorrow. Avoid travel into the downtown core tomorrow. Stay away. We are immensely proud of our police members and partners who have worked tirelessly to plan for and manage this demonstration, over the past few days under difficult circumstances of extreme cold temperatures and difficult and challenging treatment from some demonstrators. Again, the tone changing, less tolerant of the truckers and the supporters down there. Public safety remains our number one priority. So everything will be done through a lens of safety. What's going to happen? It's pretty clear. They will let these trucks sit there for a while, maybe another day, maybe a few days. Then they're going to start to move in. And you can expect that they will target the leaders, probably the people who are in that news conference, because they've now identified themselves clearly and in court can be identified as the leaders of this or the organizers. They will be charged under various municipal bylaws, traffic bylaws, anything that they can sort of identify that might be a violation, improper parking, just being disruptive, whatever it is. And then they're going to go in and they're going to start to yank. You're going to arrest the leaders, charge them with whatever charges they feel are appropriate, and then take them to court. Some of those charges may stick because they may very well be violating some traffic laws or public nuisance laws or whatever laws might be in place. But they will use those laws to clear them out. They'll bring in big trucks, tow trucks, and they'll start yanking them. You heard what the strategy from the truckers is going to be. They're going to sit there, try and keep fuel in those trucks, and they're prepared to sit there till 2024 or maybe beyond, and they've got the money to do it. But
Mhm.
if they are if they're ticketing these guys, and then if they're going to slap them with the cost of the so-called cleanup at a cost of $800,000 a day and hold them responsible, it'll eat up the $8 million in a hurry, right? So mark my words, that will be the strategy. Arrest them, ticket them, tow them, and hold them accountable for the cleanup, make them pay for it, and use up their funds so that they can't sit there much longer than maybe a week. So it's going to escalate, and
it's escalating fast.
Yeah, and I'll guarantee you that's going to be the strategy. Well, I won't guarantee it, but I think that is going to be the strategy.
Chris, do you have anything to say? I know that you've been having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I've been listening though. I'm just kind of grappling through other stuff, but yeah, it is tough to say where it's going to go from here. But it's like a lot of people say, it's going to get worse before it gets any better. Now that you mentioned how much funds they have, that number is growing. They're up to 9.2 million. So they're almost up to 10K or 10 mil. So again, that's, what's that, 2025 now? Comparable to the joke that they were making in that interview.
Well, the government's coming after that money.
Yeah, and we'll I don't know how they're going to do that, but, but we'll see.
Through lawfare.
Lawfare.
Yeah. It'll eat it up pretty quick.
Once they cut the head of the snake off, then you begin to find out how much depth this thing has and how much resilience, how far these guys can really go. We know that they have the determination, but do they really have the resources? When they start arresting people, when it gets to that point, how far does it go? How long can these truckers really sit there? So that's the question I've been asking from the beginning. How is this going to work? How far can they take it? And how will this unfold? And now we can see the strategy, because this is how it's done. You do it through, they're telegraphing this stuff.
Yeah.
They're subtly trying to tell the truckers, this is what's coming. So
I hate to use the word, but it's like a dog whistle.
Well, they're telegraphing. Yes, they're trying to let people know, and that's the thing. It's like they'll educate to a point. They'll use the word educate. Well, we're going to educate you, and then they escalate. Right? They take it up a notch, and then another notch. It's a warning, and then from the warning it goes to another warning, and then it's, if you don't get the hell out of here, we're going to tow your rig, and you're going to get arrested, and then you get arrested, and then you go to court, and your rig gets towed. And then it ends up in court. And at that point, at this point, Justin Trudeau is sitting back, warm and cozy, sipping his tea, all vaxxed up and getting through his COVID now that he's infected. So our infected and vaxxed PM is just going to sit back in his warm, cozy jammies and let these guys freeze until they get arrested. That's the strategy.
We haven't talked about this, but he looked absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Oh, and they've stated that too, that he's not feeling really the effects of the illness. But he, from the report I read there, he said he's going to be continuing work from home. So still doing other things.
And Elite 333 says they're prepared for complete war. Well, this is a form of war. It's a new form of war, and it's a kind of warfare that we've never experienced before. But this is being done in the political arena. The battles are being fought politically through the exercising of free speech, demonstrations, and the question is, how effective will this be? I think that the people demonstrating have won a victory simply by showing up, and it shows that people on that side are not alone, where they've been isolated, and it's been hard for them to gauge how many other people might be thinking like them are out there. So that is a victory in itself,
and the unity, and a chance to show people a difference in messaging, where you have Justin Trudeau and his hate speech, and everybody's calling it hate speech. Every news commentator, just about every news commentator that is analyzing this in the United States and elsewhere, in Great Britain they are too. They're saying that his Justin Trudeau statements are derogatory. They're the same statements where he said this fringe minority that he had echoed again today. But on the other side, we have a group of people who have united the country in the biggest way probably since World War II, and we'll never see this ever again. Like, this has momentum, and we gotta be wary about what direction we're gonna send that in. And we need to keep echoing sentiments of positivity, unity, friendship. We need friends. We need all these people who are against us or feel that we are monsters. We need to take the opportunity to destroy their terrible ideas and say, look, you're more than welcome to join to our side. We would love to have you. However, if you're going to infringe on us, ensure that more of our loved ones die alone in long-term care homes, etc., then at that point, just move to Quebec and you can have all the jabs you want, and you could tax the hell out of people who you don't like.
Well, that's the thing too, Brent. I noticed with the big conversation, like I mentioned before, everything that Justin Trudeau was saying, he was saying and targeting towards the protesters, but everything he said could have been said by the protesters about him. You know, the amount of doublespeak in that, and he goes and talks about unity and diversity, and we can't put up with all this hate speech and all this. The difference between the protest and what he said is he's using these words and semantics based on a system that's been led by fear for the last 2 years. So everyone's feeling comfortable now with this system they've already been following, which was coaxed by fear, where what's happening in Ottawa, in the streets of Ottawa, is actual unity. It's organic. It's not coaxed. It's not promoted in the sense of fear, or you need to do this or you're going to lose your job, or it's the right thing to do. You know, they implemented all these different forms of, lack of a better term, psychological warfare. They coerced people with their jobs. They threatened their livelihoods. They've also outcasted them. And that's the huge difference. And a lot of people don't realize that. I've noticed a lot of people who are making comments and saying, oh, well, the Karen convoy and all these negative spews, and they haven't even actually watched what's going on. You know, I've shared links with multiple people going, like, with opposing views, going, hey, we're doing a coverage on this. You should check it out. And some of them have said, oh, I don't even care. And it's like, well, obviously you do kind of care. You're posting garbage on Facebook about it, but you don't care enough to actually divulge and see what's happening with your own eyes. And like I said, that's where we're coming. We're coming from an actual point of unity. We're trying to enforce the actual definitions of the words, not the fear that's been pushing them for the last 2 years.
Thoughts, Brendan?
I want this to go well, and I think you're right when you say we have about a week. And you've been through similar situations before, so I would take your judgment and I would say, yeah. I did say as well the other day that I believe after about a week, morale on all sides, so that's the citizens of Ottawa, the truckers, the organizers of the truckers, etc., the morale is going to start to slump. People are going to start to get bitchy and agitated, and the government and the police and the city of Ottawa will get fed up, and they'll start doing forceful action. We did hear from Carla last night, our person on the ground in Ottawa, that there's been a significant difference in police presence in Ottawa since Thursday, where multiple different units of the police all across Canada have made way to Ottawa. As Rick said, there is a $800,000 expense per day for this. I believe they have the London police, York police, all kinds of different police. So the reason why I think that they've been so hung back is because they didn't have staff to deal with any of it. But you bet your butt you're going to start seeing police forces from all over Canada being shipped to Ottawa to deal with this. So,
well, they'll let it. They want to let it continue for some time because they do want, in their view, to give people the opportunity to exercise their right to demonstrate peacefully. So that's what they're doing right now. They're going through that phase of it. They're tolerating it and managing it through the lens of public safety. But police services in any jurisdiction are only going to let it go on for so long, and then they begin to ratchet things up through education, by going down there and issuing warnings, asking people to comply with bylaws, move this rig, move this car, please do this, please do that. And if they don't get cooperation, then they begin to take greater action if things are being disrupted down there. So they'll use the tools they have at their disposal, and Ottawa police have done a very effective job in directing traffic, keeping trucks out of the downtown, sending them to staging areas. Now we have trucks dispersed all over the city, not just clogging up the whole downtown. Traffic is still moving through the city, and they're trying to keep things humming along. So that's what they're trying to do. And you heard the people at the truckers at the news conference say that they do want some disruption downtown, but at the same time, they're trying to keep this as lawful and peaceful as possible. And police have been working with them to facilitate a safe demonstration all the way along the route of the convoy, all the way to Ottawa, and even within the city. But that's only going to continue for so long. And then the government, and they do take direction from government. So make no mistake, they have a variety of things to consider as a police service when it comes to managing a demonstration like this. They're not just going to let them sit there indefinitely. It's going to come to a head.
I agree. I think we've about exhausted all this. I think we've shared a lot with people today.
Yes.
And we've exposed a lot of truth. I'm really glad that we touched on and were able to share Justin Trudeau's press conference, and we were able to go through that together with everybody, and that we could bring perspectives so that people don't feel alone with watching these things, because I watch them all the time, and it's depressing when you see them, because it's like, well, that doesn't represent who any of us are, or anybody I even know for that matter. And we were able to bring the positivity and unity of the message from the core organizers for the trucking movement. So things are going to be developing. I believe we're going to reconvene again tonight, right, gentlemen?
Yes, yep. 6 p.m. tonight, and we'll have more content, more videos from Ottawa. Andrew suggested that we go with shorter clips of these news conferences. In this case, we felt it was important to share as much of these two news conferences as we could. Justin Trudeau live from Ottawa. We want to provide as much of an unfiltered, uncensored, unedited perspective for people as we can, because the mainstream media certainly does not do that. And we want you to have as much information as you possibly can from the mainstream media, if you choose to go there, from us, from the raw sources itself, so that you can take that information and draw your own conclusions. It's, we want real transparency here as much as possible, so that our worldviews, our perspectives don't color things too much. We obviously have our views and our points of view, and we're counterbalancing what's being done over there with the legacy media. So with that, we won't always run complete news conferences, but in this case, we felt it was important. So I think it was effective, and we were able to give the truckers in their news conference a bit of a platform here to get their message out, because the mainstream media was either banned because they weren't trusted by the people in there, or they just chose not to attend because they're trying to ignore them, because it isn't just what they're telling you, it's what they're not telling you they can also color the narrative. So that's also important to know and be aware of. So with that, I'll throw it over to Brendan to kind of wrap things up.
I appreciate everybody joining us to do something a little bit different here. And for everybody who's stuck it out for the entire time, we absolutely love you. And we're very glad to help share this message to help support the things in Ottawa. And once again, we are doing this in pursuit of truth and in pursuit of further unity for Canada. And this is not something that we are employed to do. We have nothing going on in that regards. We are doing this simply for you to share the message and to share the truth, and we will continue to do so for as long as necessary. And without that being said, my name is Brendan Kennedy, and I'm the host of The Flow of Discourse. I look forward to seeing everybody at 6 o'clock.
And I'm Rick Walker with Maverick News and Maverick Multimedia.
Chris, co-host of The Flow Discourse. Stay tuned.
And we'll catch you guys on the flip side, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back here with more coverage. Freedom Convoy 2022 cruising to the